And so by suppressing the evidence, by classifying the evidence, by hiding the x-rays and the photographs, burning the original notes, you can be left with the theory. Well, then we're next left with the next question. Why did Governor Connolly react 1.8 seconds after the president? They were both hit by the same bullet. Said the commission, Governor Connolly was struck merely a glancing blow, But Dr. Shaw described it as a bullet which entered his back, shattered his fifth rib, caused the entire fifth rib to become secondary missiles, which then spread out through the body, causing a large sucking wound. And one of the lawyers said, well, would Governor Connolly have noticed that right away? Dr. Shaw advised the lawyer that in his opinion he would have noticed it and would have reacted to it at once. And then we have the testimony of Governor Connolly. There is no way to reconcile Governor Connolly's testimony and Mrs. Connolly's testimony with the commission's conclusion that the same bullet which hit the president hit the governor. This is what Governor Connolly said. I heard the first shot, and later I was struck. Now, Mrs. Connolly, seated alongside of him, said precisely the same thing, except she was able to observe both the president and the governor. She said, I heard the first shot, I looked at the president, his hands, then went to his throat. And she continued, John, her husband, John Connolly, turned to his right to look at the president, couldn't see him, started to turn to the left, and then he was hit. So Mrs. Connolly is wrong, Governor Connolly is wrong, the films taken by Abraham Zapruder, they're wrong. The x-rays and photographs are gone, the original autopsy report is burned, and the FBI report is classified. And that's the way the commission operated to prove that one bullet hit both men. The motion picture film taken by Abraham Zapruder was published by the commission, and the frames are all numbered. And it is through the system that the commission fixed various things that took place that day. The commission, however, omitted to publish frames 208, 29, 210, and 211. This is, in fact, one of the pages of the Warren Commission report, which shows frame 207, and the next one underneath it is frame 212. Frame 212 has been spliced. There are two other frames put together to make up what the commission calls frame 212. When one of our investigators on the West Coast, who is an engineering graduate student, discovered this, he raised this with a number of engineering faculty members and physicists and others in universities on the West Coast, and asked them what could there possibly be in the picture which could have led to the decision by someone in government to remove those frames from the public documents. Obviously, the bullet moves too quickly to be photographed, so a bullet is not the answer. Secondly, a person could not really react quickly enough to seeing or hearing something in 4/18ths of a second, so it could not be the reaction of a human being in all probability that was suppressed when the commission omitted those frames. And when one examines frame 212, one sees the sign, large sign, probably about 5 feet long, which blocks a portion of the film. We don't know what is in frame 28, 29, 10, or 11, but we do know what is in frame 212. By the time you reached frame 212, Mr. Zapruder, who was moving his camera to follow the limousine, had moved his camera so that the left portion of the sign, left bottom portion, is no longer visible. So what has been removed in the frames, clearly, are those frames which show the entire sign. This is relevant because, as one of the commission attorneys has now agreed, if one can show that a bullet hit that sign, then the commission's theory that Oswald was the lone assassin receives another independent fatal blow, because the commission's conclusion as to when the president was hit before that would not allow time for anyone using this ancient 1898 relic, which sells for $3 if you buy them in lots of 25 or more, to have operated the bolt and fired. In fact, in the hands of the fastest rifleman the government could find, it took him 2.3 seconds to operate the bolt and fire the next shot. And the president was hit less than a second before these frames were taken. So if a bullet hit that sign, the theory that Oswald or anyone else was the lone assassin with a weapon like this one is forever gone. What you can see in frame 212, while you cannot see the bottom left-hand portion of the sign, are lines of strain across the sign, very clear lines, indicating that the sign is reacting to something which has struck it. And when you look at frame 213 and 214, you see the lines grow longer and longer, and the engineering and physics experts, photographic experts who have examined the sign, say that it appears that a bullet struck the sign in the lower left-hand portion, and the lines of strain can be seen on the succeeding frames, but the whole, of course, is not visible because that portion of the lower left-hand portion where the bullet hole might be, if it is there, has been omitted by the Commission in its publication. This was raised with Mr. Wesley Liebler, one of the attorneys for the Commission, not long ago. Mr. Liebler presented this theory, which had been presented to him, in a letter to Mr. Rankin, who was General Counsel of the Commission, and said, "In my view, it is plausible that a bullet did hit the sign." And he said, "I have no knowledge that any member of the Commission or lawyer for the Commission was ever told that the frames had been spliced and that frames had been omitted." And he then called for a new investigation and for a formal request to the Federal Bureau of Investigation as to why that frame was spliced and what is in those missing frames. Mr. Rankin wrote back and suggested that Mr. Liebler, who is now teaching at West Coast University, pay more attention to his studies out there, and indicated that the case is closed. Now we have more frames from the Zapruder film which we should give consideration to. Frame 313 is the frame which shows the president's head as he is struck by the bullet. That's the fatal shot. Now, how the president reacted, how his body moved as the bullet hit him, of course, is most relevant. If he was driven backward, then he was shot from the front. If he was driven forward, he was shot from the back. These are rules of physics which applied even in Dallas on that day. But the Commission sought to make use, evidently, of these rules in a most perverse way. The Commission published all of the frames, including after the bullet struck the president's head, 313, 314, and 315, and other frames. If you look at these frames, as the Commission published it, it appears that after the president had been hit, 315 and 314 show the president moving forward, indicating that he was hit from the rear. But one of these brilliant young men in America who are concerned about who killed their president made a thorough examination of the photographs over a period of almost a year and was able to conclusively prove that the Commission published the frames 314 and 315 in reverse order and mislabeled them. Thus, one examining frames 314 and 315 would think the president was driven forward by the bullet which hit from the rear, but since they have been transposed, it shows quite clearly the president was driven back up against the seat. He discovered this by analyzing the frames, and I won't bore you with the details, but I will read to you a letter from J. Edgar Hoover, which Mr. Hoover wrote to this gentleman who pointed out that the frames were transposed. This is from Mr. Hoover. "You are on the stationery of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. You are correct in the observation that frames labeled 314 and 315 of Commission Exhibit 885 are transposed in Volume 18, as noted in your letter." Mr. Hoover added that the National Archives is aware of this printing error. However, I do appreciate your interest in this matter. The Commission said at the outset that it was going to scrutinize the FBI